I'm gonna make this very simple for you, Dan. Men should not play sports against women. I'm not gonna get into all the bullshit that's going on out here in the world today. If anybody think that, I think they're stupid. I'm not, like I say, I support the gay community 100%. I support the transgender community 100%. But I do not, under any circumstances, under zero, think that men should play sports against women. And if anybody have a problem with that, they're gonna have to get over it, because I'm not gonna change. I just think it's wrong, period.
Which are what? The science behind this, that men and women are different. And you can call yourself a woman, you can call yourself a cat, call yourself whatever you want, but the facts are what? Trans women are men. And the W in WNBA stands for women.
Before the game, you had a conversation with Sophie Cunningham.
I did.
If you want to share what you talked
Absolutely
about, feel
not.
free. But
Absolutely not.
more of my question is just how important is it to have those like in-person conversations with people that
I think it's
have
great.
different
Yeah.
views?
I think it's great. I think both of us understand that we have platforms, and we both talked about wanting to, more than anything, educate. And there are some things that
Charles Barkley just stepped into a conversation that most major sports personalities have treated like a minefield. And he did it in the most Barkley way possible. Direct, unapologetic, and without dressing up his point. During Inside the NBA, Barkley made it obvious that he sides with Sophie Cunningham's belief that men's and women's sports should remain separated when it comes to competition. And he delivered that opinion with the same straightforward style that has defined him for decades whenever he believes people are overcomplicating something he considers simple.
But I'm never gonna think it's all right for men to play sports against women. And I don't even think that's controversial. That's the thing that's funny. Like some of this stuff make, like when you see these debates on television, like, yeah, men shouldn't play sports against women. I'm done. I don't want to hear you try to explain it to me. No, I don't want to hear it. I'm not gonna argue with you. Men shouldn't play sports against women. I'm done. There's a lot of we can argue over. That ain't one of them.
To understand why Barkley's comments carried so much weight, you have to go back to the interview that started this entire controversy. Sophie was asked about women's sports, and responded that she wanted to protect opportunities for girls and women, while saying she believes athletic competition should be divided according to biological sex. She didn't single out a particular athlete, she didn't insult anyone, and she wasn't launching a personal attack. She was answering a direct question with a policy position. Yet that response alone triggered weeks of national debate, and it was that same position Barkley was responding to when he finally decided to speak publicly.
You don't see trans men going and saying, I want to play football, I want to play basketball, I want to be... Why there's no trans men going into men's spaces? Why is it trans women that's going into women's spaces? Show me the last time a trans man was on a podium in any sport. Show me the last time a trans man won in cycling, cross country, football, they played on the team, volleyball team, track and field, 4x100 meter relay on track and field, steeplechase, name it. Show me a trans man that have been competitive.
What followed Sophie after that interview quickly became something much bigger than normal disagreement. At road games, she's been greeted with boos almost every time she gets the basketball. Signs and banners have appeared inside arenas clearly aimed at her, and the WNBA has often seemed hesitant to directly confront how personal some of the reaction has become. At a certain point, the atmosphere stopped feeling like ordinary fans expressing frustration with a player, and started looking more like an attempt to publicly punish one athlete for saying something that plenty of people across the country may privately believe themselves.
Why the fuck are y'all booing Sophie Cunningham at every game now, man? This is what we doing to Sophie, trying to villainize this woman when all she did was, what, stand up?
The reaction in Portland became one of the clearest examples of just how intense things had gotten. Whenever Sophie touched the basketball, the boos poured down from the crowd loudly enough to be unmistakable on the television broadcast. But Sophie never seemed rattled by it. Instead of stopping the game to complain or turning the situation into another post-game controversy, she responded like an athlete. She knocked down a shot, turned the energy back toward the court, and let her performance answer the people trying to get inside her head, rather than using a microphone afterward.
all of the crazies out there are now protesting her at WNBA games. So much so that a coach from another team pulled Sophie aside to have a few words with her and just let her know what she had thought about what Sophie said. Guys, Sophie Cunningham is probably the most popular athlete in the WNBA. If she goes bye-bye, there is no more WNBA. Additionally, have you ever seen Sophie Cunningham play ball before? What on earth makes y'all think that she cares about a bunch of crybabies complaining about an 80-20 issue? Literally, no one wants men and women's sports. It is highly unpopular, and the only people that do want that are people who have likely never played sports before in their lives. So,
and the crowd noise wasn't even the full story. Signs began appearing during road games, with messages clearly criticizing Sophie over what she had said during the ESPN interview, while arena security reportedly had to intervene on multiple occasions when arguments between fans carrying opposing messages became more heated. For a WNBA game to create this level of tension over comments made away from the basketball court is highly unusual, and that fact alone shows just how dramatically this story had expanded beyond anything connected to wins, losses, standings, or actual basketball.
Super respectful. We were just holding our signs and cheering for both teams. And this lady, older lady, comes up to us, and at first I think she's gonna be nice, and she asks like, "What are you guys doing?" Something like that. And then it was like, "Jesus loves everyone." That's what she told us, and I was like, "Oh, I know." Like, I'm religious. Like, I know. Like, I know. Nice. Yeah. And she's like, "Oh, I hope Jesus can forgive you for what sin you've done," and like something like that. And then she told us that we were effing insane. And she's like, and she went like insane. Yeah. She's like, you better stop this and stop pulling this. Yeah. And for you guys, I hope God can save you. Yeah.
She said, for you to come here and pull this shit. Yeah. She said the word. Yeah. Did she say effing insane or?
No, she said the word.
And nobody around you spoke up for you. No.
No.
I will say, Annalie, when I came over, you were in tears.
Yeah, I've never been yelled at like that. I mean, I've had people hate on me on the internet, but like it doesn't really affect me as much because it's just people online.
Then came the confrontation that sent the controversy into another gear. Seattle Storm co-owner Celeste Keaton approached two teenage fans sitting courtside after they displayed a sign thanking Sophie for speaking up for girls in sports. The message wasn't threatening, it didn't insult another athlete, and it wasn't attacking anyone personally. It was simply expressing support. Yet Keaton reportedly told the teenagers that what they were doing was insane, and suggested that they needed forgiveness, and one of the girls was reportedly crying by the end of the encounter. The league eventually punished Keaton with a fine and suspension, but that action came after the footage spread widely, and public criticism continued building for days. That context is crucial to understanding Barkley's comments. He wasn't walking into some theoretical policy discussion happening in a television studio. He was responding to a controversy that had already spilled into arenas and involved two young fans who attended a basketball game to support a player they admired, only to leave emotionally shaken after being confronted by an adult who held power within the organization.
Sophie Cunningham has said that males, biological males, do not belong in women's sport. That's it. That is the rational, sane, commonly shared stance. It's a safety issue. It's a fairness issue. It's not an anti-trans kids campaign, but this coach saying, oh, trans kids are well... This is what they do. The straw man argument. She is trying to say that Sophie is against trans kids and she's excluding them and this is evil. No! It's so dumb, it's so evil, it's so calculated. And this is how they silence people.
Barkley also didn't simply say he agreed with Sophie and move on. He essentially issued a warning to the league about how carefully this situation needed to be handled, making the point that punishing players for honestly expressing their beliefs could create a precedent that affects everyone, from athletes and coaches to executives inside the league office. Coming from Barkley, that message carries extra weight because he has spent his entire broadcasting career saying what he thinks even when he knows the reaction could be intense. And his comments became even more significant once other recognizable names from completely different parts of sports began entering the discussion. Suddenly, this was no longer just Sophie against critics inside the WNBA ecosystem. Established athletes, commentators, broadcasters, and former players were beginning to publicly challenge the way the controversy had been handled.
So she just says what's true. She says common sense thing, and she gets so much backlash. She's like, men should not be playing in women's sports. Why is that so, like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's a simple statement. She stood by it. That's what I love about when people say things. don't back down. If you say something, stand by it. And she said it. She backed it up. She's not backing down no matter how much heat she gets from certain people. It's an 80-20 issue. 80% of the country think it's true, 20% don't. The 20% is crushing her. Let them. Who cares? But I love that she didn't back down. I love everything she stands for. She plays hard. She's good. Like I said, I don't watch WNBA, but I like those two girls right there. Yeah, she's going to get backlash from the girls around her and other teams. And, you know, it's a liberal and mostly gay league, which is fine. I have no problem. My daughter is gay. No problem. I got no problem with that. I got no problem with that. But the way they push things on people, sometimes I don't like it in the WNBA. That's why I'm not a big fan of watching their games and supporting it.
Former Chicago Bears linebacker Brian Urlacher was among the football figures who weighed in, questioning why a straightforward opinion about fairness in competition had turned into such a massive scandal. Kendrick Perkins, now one of ESPN's most recognizable NBA analysts after his playing career, approached the issue with a slightly calmer tone, but reached a similar conclusion, arguing that athletes should be able to answer difficult questions honestly without having their character placed on trial for the rest of the season. Shaquille O'Neal also entered the conversation, suggesting on his platform that the entire controversy had become far larger than Sophie's original comments deserved. And the support wasn't limited to retired basketball or football players. Broadcasters and former Olympic athletes joined in as well. Sage Steele, who has previously spoken publicly about fairness in women's athletics, defended the two teenage fans involved in the Seattle incident and argued that the way they were treated reflected badly on the Storm organization, regardless of anyone's position on the broader issue.
We're trying to almost weaponize the word kid and children to, dig deep on the feelings of people instead of the facts, which are what? The science behind this, that men and women are different. And you can call yourself a woman, you can call yourself a cat, call yourself whatever you want, but the facts are what? Trans women are men. And the W in WNBA stands for women. So I just hate it when words like that are weaponized. And Sophie Cunningham made it very, very clear from day one, when, by the way, she didn't bring this up. She was asked by an ESPN reporter about this topic, and she answered. And then as the controversy brewed, she went on Twitter and said the same thing, which is, I am not trying to exclude anyone. Everybody is welcome at my table, but this is the WNBA.
Steele's perspective stood out because she wasn't speaking from the same NBA-centered world as Barkley. She came at the story as someone who has spent years working in sports broadcasting and covering athletes when controversial issues emerge. From her perspective, there's a meaningful distinction between an athlete expressing a personal viewpoint and an athlete deliberately attacking someone, and she argued that Sophie hadn't crossed that line. In her view, the scale of the backlash revealed more about the current cultural environment than about the actual words Sophie used. The list of people speaking up continued growing. Former competitive swimmer and women's sports advocate Riley Gaines thanked Barkley publicly for using his platform to make an argument she has been pushing for years, although Gaines obviously approached it from an advocacy standpoint rather than traditional sports commentary. Other sports personalities, including figures connected to golf and retired professional baseball players, offered shorter reactions on social media, generally repeating the idea that an athlete giving an honest response to a direct question shouldn't automatically become the target of a sustained public campaign.
Do you think Sophie Cunningham's comments were anti-trans?
No, not even a little. Dan, she went out of her way to say, I love everyone. This is about science and fairness and protecting women. Because guess what? Until recently, women, we had our own sets of grievances. We couldn't vote. It wasn't that long ago. You really put it in the context of the history of the world. Women couldn't vote. We couldn't get, checking accounts without the husband's signature. All of these things women fought for. Women to be able to be in the workplace. All of these things. Now that we've gotten those things and we've evened the playing field, somehow there's this other level of grievance come. It's always about grievance. And this is protecting what we've earned, not about hating on anybody else.
Perkins later expanded on his thinking during a First Take discussion, noting that he has watched plenty of athletes create controversy throughout his years around professional sports. What separated Sophie's situation in his mind was the way she continued responding to the backlash. She remained calm, avoided personal insults, and didn't appear interested in escalating things even as the criticism surrounding her intensified. Perkins pointed out that NBA players have made statements over the years that were far more provocative and inflammatory. Yet many of those situations disappeared quickly instead of producing the kind of recurring reaction Sophie has faced. Still, The support for Sophie has never been universal, and pretending otherwise would leave out an important part of the story. Some current WNBA players and coaches strongly disagreed with her comments, arguing that even if she didn't intend to hurt anyone, her framing could contribute to an environment that feels hostile toward teammates or opponents whose identities don't fit neatly within the categories she described. Other commentators criticized Barkley as well, saying he had entered a complicated issue without fully acknowledging the broader questions surrounding inclusion in competitive sports. That opposition is important because this story isn't simply one outspoken basketball legend fighting against an entire league. There are genuine disagreements involving athletes, coaches, fans, executives, and commentators who hold very different ideas about what fairness and inclusion should look like in sports. Some WNBA players have openly said they respect Sophie as a competitor, while still believing that her wording simplified a conversation that deserves more depth than a short interview answer can provide. Brittney Griner's comments introduced another perspective because she didn't fully plant herself on either side. Ahead of a game against Sophie's team, Griner told reporters that the constant discussion had become extremely annoying, which could be interpreted less as an attack on Sophie's right to hold an opinion and more as frustration with how one interview response had consumed so much attention around the league.
Besides the point. Sophie Cunningham becoming the face of protecting women and protecting girls is the most hilarious thing I've ever seen in my life. For one, she's saying that it's not about trans athletes. It's about protecting young girls. It's not about excluding only trans athletes. But you were a ring girl for somebody that has alleged allegations against women. Not only that, but being exposed by an old teammate for voting for somebody that has alleged allegations against young women and young girls. Young girls. Young girls, right? So all of a sudden, she's this face of protecting young girls and young women, but being a hypocrite. That's only one part of this conversation. The focus of shutting the doors on trans athletes being this big emphasis right now, while trans athletes are just minding their freaking business. I have not seen a trans woman.
Some people immediately interpreted Griner's frustration as a subtle shot at Sophie, as though she were blaming Cunningham for creating the controversy in the first place. Others believed Griner was simply tired of the endless media questions, television debates, and outside noise surrounding something that players still had to put aside once the basketball went up. What happened shortly afterward provided a much better indication of which interpretation was probably closer to reality.
And this is what I keep talking about when I say we live in a backwards society. Sophie Cunningham, a WNBA player, one of the most notable WNBA players in the league now, is trying to defend women's rights. And the same women she's trying to defend are attacking her. Because it doesn't matter what you're trying to do. It doesn't matter what you mean by it. All it looks like is you support Trump. And these women have Trump derangement syndrome. They don't understand that you're making women's sports safer and fair so that they don't have to get in a ring and box a man. So they don't have to spend their entire life training to be beaten by a man who wasn't good enough to play in the NBA. Like, so she's doing what she can to protect the sanctity of the sports that she loves. And you guys are attacking her for it. That is the craziest, most backward shit I have ever seen or heard, bro. I've never heard anything like this. So you don't want fair sports for women?
Before that game began, cameras captured Griner and Sophie sharing a playful moment on the floor as they recreated a finger-pointing gesture that had already gone viral online. The interaction made it pretty difficult to argue that serious personal hostility existed between them. In many ways, that brief clip accomplished more than a formal statement from the league ever could, because it showed two professional athletes who may not agree on every issue, still laughing together and preparing to compete normally. And that may be the most overlooked part of this entire story. The players actually closest to the situation have often displayed more maturity than many of the people arguing about them from outside the court. Sophie has repeatedly said that biological women, transgender women, and transgender men should all be treated respectfully even while she continues to support separate competitive categories. She hasn't publicly mocked another player, she hasn't turned confrontations into personal feuds, and after learning what happened to the two teenage fans in Seattle, she even offered to send them gifts, attempting to turn an ugly experience into something more positive.
For anyone who attends a Storm game. Cunningham also weighed in after this alleged confrontation at the game. She posted on social media, "I truly believe there is a safe space and love for everybody, biological girls, biological boys, trans women, and trans men. Everyone is welcome at my table. You can disagree and still be kind." She said, "Bravo to those girls for standing up for what they believe. You'll be hearing from me soon." And she added, "Truly embarrassing of the co-owner. Unfortunately shows the type of leader she is."
Sophie's response after the confrontation involving the Storm co-owner quickly became almost as widely discussed as the original interview itself. She emphasized that people should be capable of disagreeing while still treating one another with basic kindness, praised the teenagers for having the confidence to stand behind what they believed, and criticized Keaton's behavior without launching a personal campaign against her or demanding that she be fired. That approach has remained remarkably consistent throughout the controversy, even as the reaction surrounding Sophie has continued growing. Put that next to what has happened at some road arenas, and the difference becomes difficult to ignore. There have been signs specifically designed to shame her, coordinated-sounding boos whenever she touches the basketball, and even an organizational co-owner who decided two teenagers holding a supportive sign deserve to be confronted. People can disagree completely with Sophie's position and still recognize that she hasn't been the person consistently raising the temperature.
Want to come in?
She's covering your sign.
Outside the buildings, the disagreement has taken on an entirely different visual form. Increasing numbers of fans carrying signs supporting women's sports have started gathering around road games, while counter-protesters have appeared with messages criticizing Sophie and the position she represents. In some locations, security personnel have reportedly needed to keep opposing groups apart, and local television coverage has increasingly focused on the scenes developing around the arenas almost as much as the actual WNBA games being played inside them.
Grip it tighter. And that was so easy. Can I get a picture of me? So dramatic. Oh yes, quite. Hey, yes. Hey, yes. Hey.
That was the climate Barkley entered when he finally decided to publicly address the situation. He could easily have avoided it. Plenty of famous commentators stay far away from controversies like this because the potential backlash is obvious, and there's very little personal benefit to getting involved. Barkley has rarely followed that strategy. Once he spoke, however, it seemed to give other personalities permission to openly discuss what they had already been thinking. Some agreed strongly with him, while others challenged him just as strongly. Urlacher's comments continued circulating well after Barkley's segment because football audiences who normally wouldn't spend much time following a WNBA controversy suddenly became aware of the story. Perkins kept defending his position across multiple appearances as well, repeatedly returning to the same argument. Sophie was asked a question, answered it honestly, and has conducted herself more calmly than many of the people attacking her ever since.
So let's get something straight. Sophie Cunningham can make publicly transphobic comments, triple down on them, and continue to play without facing any real consequences, averaging 9 points per game, by the way. And yet, the second that someone else pushes back on them, they get hit with a suspension and a fine. Like, am I reading this correctly? Cunningham's recent harmful comments about trans women and women's sports sparked an anti-trans rally outside of Tuesday's game between the Storm and the Fever. In fact, a second Sophie Cunningham rally, which is what they're calling it, by the way, is also being planned for Friday's game in Portland against the Fire.
At some point, the question becomes whether the league would be better served by pulling attention back toward basketball instead of allowing every interview and press conference to become a debate over athletes' personal beliefs. Professional sports have seen countless players make controversial statements over the years without producing this level of sustained and organized reaction, which raises another obvious question: why has this particular issue generated such extraordinary intensity? And there is little indication that the situation is disappearing soon. Every road game Sophie plays now brings cameras waiting to hear whether the boos return, see whether another provocative banner appears, and watch for any new confrontation that forces the WNBA to respond more directly instead of relying on broad statements after controversy has already exploded. Each time another respected figure from football, basketball, broadcasting, or another part of sports adds an opinion, whether supportive or critical, the debate reaches another audience and gains another cycle of attention.
I could not respect Sophie Cunningham more because she's putting her career on the line speaking her truth, trying to protect our women and girls, and making sure that they have the ability to compete and all of their hard work to pay off because they're competing on an even playing field. That is the number one issue to me. And I want to see more women go ahead and speak out about this, because put all the other issues aside. This is sport. And in sport, it must be a fair and even playing field. And having biological men competing with women is robbing them of their opportunities. Number one, that is simple. If this is a sport, it should be about equality and fairness on the playing field. And this is not fair. All the other issues, protecting our women in the locker rooms, all of that, I agree with. But when it comes to sport, this should be the number one frontier issue, and it is not talked about enough. And we need more women to talk about it, because it's stealing the opportunities of our hardworking women and girls.
Through all the noise, one fact remains easy to lose sight of. Sophie Cunningham didn't volunteer to become the face of a national argument over competitive fairness in women's sports. She was asked a direct question, gave the answer she believed, continued standing behind that answer once criticism arrived, and kept her public response relatively steady while the atmosphere surrounding her grew more heated. Charles Barkley's decision to finally speak didn't start the controversy, and it certainly won't end it. But his comments did reinforce something that had already become increasingly obvious. Sophie's viewpoint exists far beyond one WNBA locker room, and significantly more people throughout the wider sports world appear to share some version of that position than the loudest online reactions might make it seem.